Watching Mental Health with Marcy, and I'm Marcy. In today's video, we are going to be talking about self-compassion. And if you don't know what self-compassion is, I'll get into it in a minute, but we are going to take a self-compassion quiz, which if you didn't know it exists, now you do. So do I. I'm just starting to read this book, Self-Compassion, The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself by Kristin Neff. And so she describes self-compassion as to stop judging and evaluating ourselves altogether, to stop trying to label ourselves as good or bad, and simply accept ourselves with an open heart, to treat ourselves with the same kindness, caring, and compassion we would show to a good friend or even a stranger for that matter. Sadly, however, there's almost no one whom we treat as badly as ourselves. And so if you're anything like me and are very hard on yourself or just not compassionate to yourself, not kind to yourself, this might be the video for you. And again, I cannot fully recommend this. I haven't read through the rest of it. I will let you know as I read through more of it if I recommend it. But we are going to take a fun, well, I don't know if it's going to be fun, but it is a thing, a self-compassion quiz together. By together, I mean I'm going to take it. You have to take it on your own. But it does say, basically, I finished the first chapter and it said that you can kind of determine your precise level of self-compassion using the self-compassion scale. And so she has it on this website where you can test your level of self-compassion. I will caveat, though, before we get started, if you're like me, she literally says in this book, if you're like, hey, if you feel like you lack sufficient self-compassion, are you criticizing yourself for this too? If so, stop right there. So that's why I think it's so funny, because in this topic, I was, what was it, last week or so, I was thinking about it and I was like, oh, I'm just not self-compassionate. Like, I'm awful for not being self-compassionate. And I'm like, what kind of meta circle of life is this? Where it's like I'm being mean to myself about not being compassionate enough. And so I will say, regardless of whatever score I get or you get, it's really just to set a baseline to see as you go through your self-compassion practice, if that's something that you find would be helpful, to see if it improves over time. And so it's really just a baseline. It's not a matter of being like, oh, well, I'm not that self-compassionate, so I suck. But we will see how this goes, and we will try our best. And by we, I mean me. I will try my best to be self-compassionate while taking this quiz. So let's go on to it's self-compassion.org. Thing at the bottom here, test your level of self-compassion. So we will go into here. And so really what we're supposed to do is indicate how often I behave in the stated manner. Basically almost never, occasionally, half the time, fairly often, or almost always. And so let's see what we think. Oh, this is going to be hard because I'm basically going to be like outing myself. I think there's like 20 something questions. So we'll see how this goes. Okay. So I'm disapproving and judgmental about my own flaws and inadequacies. Okay. Almost always. All right. When I'm feeling down, I tend to obsess and fixate on everything that's wrong. Almost always. Sorry, I'm like already not being self-compassionate about it. This was going well. When things are going badly for me, I see the difficulties as a part of life that everyone goes through. Almost never. I never think of that I'm like, oh, everyone else goes through this. No, definitely not. When I think about my inadequacies, it tends to make me feel more separate and cut off from the rest of the world. Maybe. I would say maybe half the time. I would say, like, again, it's hard to like do it in terms of like frequency versus like just putting yourself on the scale of it here, but I'm gonna say about half the time. I try to be loving towards myself when I'm feeling emotional pain. Never. I don't know if there's no zero. You can't choose like actually never. But anyway, definitely not. When I fail at something important to me, I become consumed by feelings of inadequacy. Almost always. I am not good at failing. I don't like it, and I become consumed with feelings of inadequacy, as the quiz says. So yeah, I hate failing, which is a part of life, but I hate it. So anyway, when I'm down and out, I remind myself there are lots of other people in the world feeling like I am. Almost never. When times are really difficult, I tend to be tough on myself. Almost always. When something upsets me, I try to keep my emotions in balance. I would say maybe about half the time. It kind of depends, I think, on the situation, but sometimes I think I do. Sometimes I let myself kind of feel the emotions. So yeah, about half the time, I think. When I feel inadequate in some way, I try to remind myself that feelings of inadequacy are shared by most people. No, I never think about anyone else. I'm so selfish. See, and again, you can like literally hear my inner/outer critic now, since I'm telling it out loud to you. You can just hear it chirping as I'm taking this damn quiz. But that's okay. This is all about learning, setting a baseline, self-compassion. So let's continue on. I'm intolerant and impatient towards those aspects of my personality I don't like. I would say probably fairly often. Fairly often. I'm trying to think, I was like, what do I not like about myself? I don't know, but I mean, not that we need to get into that, but yeah, probably fairly often. When I'm going through a very hard time, I give myself the caring and tenderness I need. I'm going to say occasionally, because sometimes I do like take time off for myself or take a bath or do whatever, but not all that often. Okay, when I'm feeling down, I tend to feel like most other people are probably happier than I am. Not really. I would say occasionally. I mean, I'm just more focused on myself. I'm not like thinking, oh, everyone else is happy. I don't really care. Sounds bad. But anyway, again, this is like a whole, like, I'm sure you could do like a psychoanalysis just of me taking this quiz. But anyway, when something painful happens, I try to take a balanced view of the situation. I'm going to say occasionally, because like, not really. I don't think I usually take a balanced view, but I would say occasionally. Sometimes I might. I try to see my feelings as part of the human condition. Definitely almost never. Not about failure over here. Even though I feel like I'm going to fail this quiz. Even though, like, you can't even fail. You're just getting a score. And I'm like, I want to get 100%. I want to get the best score. But probably the 100% will be like, you're not compassionate at all towards yourself. But we will see. When I see aspects of myself that I don't like, I get down on myself. Almost always, of course. When I fail at something important to me, I try to keep things in perspective. Almost never. I feel like these are just like flip-flopped questions to the previous one. And it's just like trying to do the more compassionate one. I'm like, nah, not about that life. Okay. Almost done. When I'm really struggling, I tend to feel like other people must be having an easier time of it. Again, I don't like really think about other people when I'm struggling. Like that's not really how my brain works in my comparison logic. Like I'm just more focused on myself. So I'll say, occasionally or half the time. I feel like other people might be having an easier time. I'm going to say about half the time, I think. Or say, okay, no, I'm going to change it to occasionally. I don't feel like I think that much like it. Okay. I'm kind to myself when I'm experiencing suffering. Let's see. What is like the honest answer? We're either between almost never and occasionally. This is what we're trying to decide. Okay, I'm going to say almost never. Like, because this is trying to be honest about it, right? Okay. When something upsets me, I get carried away with my feelings. I think it kind of depends. I would say about half the time. I feel like some things can kind of like set me off, but other things, It depends. So yeah, I would say about half the time. I can be a bit cold-hearted towards myself when I'm experiencing suffering. Like, this is like understatement of the year. It's like cold-hearted bitch over here towards myself, which is so funny. It's not funny, but it's just so interesting how like I can be so compassionate to everyone else, but then I'm like a cold hearted person to myself. And it's just so interesting. And that's like the same thing where so far, again, only reading a chapter of this book is just about how you're so different when you would be to like a friend or a family member versus like the types of things you would say to yourself. So, okay. When I'm feeling down, I try to approach my feelings with curiosity and openness. Definitely almost never. I'm tolerant of my own flaws and inadequacy. Almost never. When something painful happens, I tend to blow the incident out of proportion. I would say, usually I do. I would say, well, I think it depends on the situation, but in general, I will have like some overreacting to different things. Like, for example, if just something just doesn't go my way. So I think I'm going to say fairly often, because I would say it's probably more than half the time. I just like catastrophize and make everything like the worst possible scenario that's going to happen. So I think fairly often is accurate. Okay. When I fail at something that's important to me, I tend to feel alone in my failure. I'm going to say fairly often. Again, this failing at things that are important to you. Apparently that's like the highlight of this quiz. I'm like, I don't fail at things that are important to me. I don't fail at anything. That's what I'm trying to argue with the quiz, but that's not how that works. So anyway, let's see. Okay, fairly often. And I think there's one more question. I think there's 26. Yeah. I try to be understanding and patient towards those aspects of my personality I don't like. Definitely no. What was the other one? I think it was similar. Understanding and patient. What was the other one? There was something about this. Let's see. I can't find it now. That's fine. I was like, it had something to do with your personality. But yeah, I definitely am not patient and understanding. So let's see. We're going to say occasionally. Now I really want to find it. Now I'm like, I can't find this question. My personality, I don't. Oh, here it is. I'm intolerant and impatient. And I said fairly often. And so now it's just the opposite. I'm understanding and impatient. And so I said occasionally. So it's basically like flipped. Okay. Are we ready to calculate my scores? I don't know. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Self-kindness, 1.4. Self-judgment, 4.8. Common humanity, 1.0. Isolation, 2.75. Mindfulness, 1.75. Over-identification, 4.25. Overall score, 1.72. I don't know what any of that means, so let's look. Okay. Average overall self-compassion tends to be around 3 on the 1 to 5 scale. So, okay. Yeah, so as a rough guide, if you have 1 to 2.5, your score indicates you are low in self-compassion. Okay. And then 2.5 to 3.5 is your moderate, 3.5 to 5 is that your high. And so, okay, so definitely low in self-compassion. Not unexpected. But yeah, basically, it's like for the things that are self-judgment, isolation, and over-identification, those are things that you can see I'm very high in. And so that makes my score lower because those are like not good things. We're not supposed to be, like my self-judgment is very high. Very high. I mean, I should be impressed. It's like 4.8. That's almost 5. I actually don't know how I didn't get 5.0 on that. So only me would be like, hey, I want to get a higher score on self-judgment. Like only me. But anyway, lots of room for improvement. I will definitely take a screenshot of this so I can kind of keep it in the back of my mind. And, you know, once I finish or get farther in the book, kind of do another reassessment, see if there are some practices that will help me. There is an exercise in the first chapter as well, outside of doing this quiz, that I'm going to do probably in a future video. But that's why I haven't continued reading the book, because like it has you do stuff like exercises to actually help with self-compassion along the way. So we will see how it goes. I, again, am not surprised by any of my scores based on just knowing myself and knowing that I definitely have low self-kindness, high self-judging. And so, yeah, not a surprise, but it's really something that can bring awareness to realizing where that needs focus, because I catch myself like probably like 300 times in this video just saying negative things about myself, or just not being compassionate to myself, or being like, oh, I'm not, being caring for myself when I'm not in a good mood, or things like that. And so I have a lot to learn. Clearly, I'm definitely interested in this subject, because again, I feel like I have a decent amount of compassion for other people, but somehow just like applying it inward is such a foreign concept to me. So we're going to learn this together. Maybe you're already an expert in self-compassion. If you are, great. Let me know how to do that in the comments down below. But otherwise, I will put the link to Kristin Neff's website, just in case you want to take this quiz yourself. Again, nothing sponsored, of course. But yeah, just if you're curious about your self-compassion score. But remember, we are not to judge ourselves on the score, because then it defeats the whole purpose, which I know, like, I'm already like, oh, well, I got some work to do. I'm not very good at this, but it's just a learning. It is, is a baseline. We're just finding out that we have room to grow. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to take an approach to it. Again, will I like beat myself up about this 1.72? Really, I'm just mad I didn't get a 5 for self-judgment, to be honest. Literally, I'm like, I just want the worst score possible. Yeah, I was like, I didn't get a 1. I was like, I just need the worst score possible. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. So thank you so much for watching, and stay well, my friends.